we just again thank you for being here. This you guys are you care deeply, I know, and we just had to have you here. So that was our prayer, and here you are. But I think each of you brings perspectives, being leaders in the community, about what we are doing, and then what we can be doing. So, Commissioner, you're up first. What do you see in terms of homelessness? Getting better, getting worse? I know Marion County is involved in a lot of stuff, so maybe please share that.
Yeah, that's a really big question that I could probably spend many hours, so maybe I'll come back to talk about. I would say the things that I see growing in homelessness is the more dire straits on the street. Since Measure 110 passed, we have an exacerbated issue of individuals who are already in trauma having greater access to fentanyl and xylazine and other hard drugs that are really causing them to self-medicate because of the pain that they're experiencing more often, which is causing more damage.
You okay?
Oh my gosh. And I think because of that exacerbation of that particular issue with the folks that are street level homeless, it's causing a greater divide for us to be able to get them into services, for them to want to receive services, because it's harder to connect with them. I personally have never been high, so I don't know what that experience looks like, but I do know that from a year ago when Julie and I went through Wallace Marine Park with Be Bold Street Ministries and had conversations with folks in the park, till now, I just saw one of those individuals. He's in a very different state of mind. He couldn't have a conversation with me. And he has changed his drug of choice. And I think not only is he feeling more lost, it's more available. So I'm frustrated as a commissioner because it's not just that people seek out drugs. It's now that it's legal, people go offer them more. They're so boldly out handing them out. And the problem is growing. In East Salem, the issue over off of Devonshire, which we call Fentanyl Alley now in our community. There are dozens of individuals who are high and sleeping on sidewalks. And I get images just about every day from citizens over there who are watching drug dealers hand out drugs. So we need to fix that issue. But in addition to that, we need to take action on access to services and to define the services. Yesterday, in the conversation that I had with Congresswoman Chavez-DeRemer, it was obvious to me that the average person doesn't know what a low barrier is versus a high barrier. We've had this conversation last year in February at your luncheon. You talked about it a little bit. There's I would say, an emotional challenge for individuals who are not in and or navigating homelessness to support shelters because they feel like, I'll use UGM as an example. How many times do you hear, oh, UGM is a high barrier shelter. I can't get behind that because it's all about God. That's so frustrating to me because folks have never actually taken the time to walk through the front door.
Right.
And so one of the things that we're going to be working on is education and definition of service and provider awareness to folks, so that way we can see people really get behind the mission of the UGM, Samunka House, Be Bold Street Ministries. I mean, there's many that are low barrier, 2-day right now access facilities that really need our help.
Right.
And so it's just about people really engaging. But what I do see working on a positive note is Marion County has taken a special interest, I think, in the last 3 years, maybe because I have a different perspective as a commissioner. We're investing dollars in different ways than we had before. So far, about $12 million into supported services programs across Marion County that directly supports this population. We're bringing online transitional housing facilities, programs for individuals, programs for parents and their children. And we're taking a very deep dive into our human services system and dissecting each program, its funding source, and determining who we're serving, who needs to be served, and how do we pivot to get to solutions. And we've been doing that in the discussion phase for a few months. We had a very good work session about a week ago that Julie came to. It was a little over 3 hours. She learned a lot about services in Marion County. And then in early March, our team will come back to the board with suggestions. And the goal will be to take those suggestions and amplify street level access to seeing and doing. We'll be opening a new behavioral health crisis center later this year, which is a really big deal for the whole community. It's a 24/7 operation right now. People know of it as PCC, the Psychiatric Crisis Center. It's located at Salem Hospital. We are moving it to Commercial Street, just south of Owens.
Okay.
And we are quadrupling the size of the facility.
Wow.
And we are adding 2 separate accesses, one for children and families and one for adults.
Cool.
So that way everybody who is in any type of crisis can come to us. If it's not a physical medical need crisis, they don't have to go to the ER. They can come to our team and we can assess them and get them into supportive care.
Fantastic. Wow. Answer to prayer. I mean, the mental health issues are what we see outside, and I will tell you, we are doing things to better accommodate with mental health counselors in our shelters.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get to the point where you can talk to people or each other and show that you care by providing some of the things that they need physically, you can't get any past that. It really doesn't do much good. But that psychiatric behavioral health center, crisis center.
Yeah, we're taking the word psychiatric out of it, the title, because not everybody is at a psychiatric level of crisis.
Okay.
As you know, we all enter trauma at a very different stage.
Right.
And I believe that word psychiatric deters people from coming into our system because they don't feel that they're at that level. I don't want them at that level when I see them the first time. I want them at this level.
Yeah. Wow. That's very thoughtful. Julie, I want to give you a chance.
I was just one thing to note. I think in that meeting, I was surprised to learn how many phone calls do you think that PCC received last year from people in some form of crisis?
Pick a number.
Thousands. 12,000. 10,000.
I wouldn't even venture a guess.
Tell them.
43,000.
Oh my word.
43,000
In
phone
12
calls
months.
to PCC.
Wow.
And how many people work there?
I don't know, not enough. I mean, it's a 24/7 operation, so I think we have in total maybe 20 staff full-time. But it's one of the hardest jobs to fill.
Oh, yeah.
We're always looking for QMHPs, qualified mental health professionals, the therapist level providers, so we can bring in more people to serve. Because you have to have a therapist at the top of the pyramid to provide case management services. This system of care in Oregon is completely broken. And nobody here, none of us are naive to that. And I know the public feels like everything is broken because there's people sleeping on their front porch. We are trying to figure out how to create the real conversations at the state level, who's in charge of resource allocation at the county level to fix this crisis. And there's many buckets of crisis, right? And I just want to put it all into a pool and just serve it together. Because the siloing of response is what's, it's like whack-a-mole. It's really how it feels like. The legislature just thinks this is today's crisis and that's tomorrow's crisis. And we being them, because it's really not me, the legislature doesn't see this crisis system as people.
Right.
And as all of us know, I come with a bag full of challenges just in myself. And I need my whole person served to be healthy, not just a half of me or a quarter of me. And we're working really hard on that. We have local legislators who are drafting legislation to help us reduce the barriers that we have to the Oregon State Hospital system.
Right.
There's a bill going in the short session to decrease the expectation for civil commitment.
Oh.
That is a hot topic for folks that don't understand the system of care. When I say this person needs to be civilly committed, I'm not saying we need to institutionalize this person.
Right. They need care.
I'm saying we need to not put them in our jail.
Right.
We need to put them in a hospital with a hospital level of care where they can be evaluated, treated, medicated if that's the case, stabilized, and then through a program Marion County has called Community Restoration. create a bridge
Integrate that.
right back into the community and stabilize into our systems. But we don't, the counties, the cities are not equipped and or structured and or resourced to provide that level of care. That is the state's responsibility, which is why Marion County is suing the Oregon State Hospital, because they're not doing their job. And we want them to.
You talked about the level at which somebody can come into the Oregon State Hospital system.
Right.
It seems like that bar is pretty high.
It
I
is.
mean, you have to, there has to be evidence that there was injury or just horrible things before you can get into the state hospital.
Well-
What about,
Virtually now, the only people that go to the state hospital are people who are being criminally charged and are there on aid and assist. And aid and assist is the determination under the justice system that you have committed a crime,
Right.
but you were unable to aid and assist in your own defense because you have a mental impairment or maybe a developmental impairment. So the court assigns you to the hospital for stabilization so you can return to the justice system to be able to participate in your own defense. That is all being facilitated, unfortunately, through a federal order from Judge Mossman out of Portland, which is really tying the hands of the Oregon State Hospital in certain ways. But the state hospital wasn't doing their job before adequately, which is why we have all these people navigating the streets.
wow,
And so Oregon actually has a very unique design system of care, very different than other states. We have a psychiatric crisis board, the service board that oversees folks that go into the system, versus just listening to a psychiatrist that works maybe in Salem
Right.
and has navigated whatever process is happening, and they say, I've seen and engaged this person, they need help. There's this whole level of like arbitrary people that have to say yes or no to that. And I get checks and balances, but ours is so extreme. People are dying as a result
they
of
are.
it.
Yeah, this is life and death stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And we've got to all come together and mow down the silos and focus,
Yep.
cool it, just
That's
like
right.
you said. Julie, on Salem City Council,
Yep.
I know the city's doing a lot of stuff, and I know you've been spearheading some of that stuff, but if you would, please share just your perspective and
Thank you, Dan. What I find myself thinking about in the midst of this conversation is the whole family, the whole city, you know, not just the people in crisis. That's only part of the problem.
Right.
The rest of us are dealing with all of this on a daily basis.
Sure.
Some of us more than others, depending on where you live and who you live with, right? So I wondered, and I asked in that meeting, out of those 40,000 phone calls, how many were family members of people in crisis? I know I've
Sure.
called a couple of times,
sure.
you know, and I'm like, what do I do? You know, trying to get help from PCC in that regard. Yeah, it's a big mess, and I believe the fragmentation is right currently the biggest part of our problem. That we're not unified in our efforts,
Sure.
you know, and we're not, I don't think, looking enough at what's the return on investment for the amount of dollars being poured into a place or a program or whatever. Are we actually having enough success in that way to justify the end? So I really want to work together with the county in this effort and the state to get to a place where we have more facilities available, more help available, more professionals in place to meet the needs.
Sure.
And I think the rest of the family
Yeah.
is suffering too.
Sure.
You know, there's long-term impact to all of this mess that's been created, and I know we can get there. It's just a matter of how. I know it's together.
Well, at Union Gospel Mission for 71 years, we've been showing people what love looks like, what friendship looks like, what relationships look like. But we have our 15-month recovery program, and you guys are both aware of that. But I want to make sure folks know that people who need a timeout, need love and care, get that, and then they come upon graduation. And we celebrate tremendously. I mean, the Holy Spirit's filling the room, but the joy of seeing them new life change. And I think that's one of the outcomes that really we all want, but it isn't life change for that one person. Cheering them on, just like at a high school graduation or a wedding, is all their family, and it always impacts us tremendously to see that we've spent a lot of time with that one person.
Right.
It's 10 people that are affected in some cases, and one of the friend of mine said, you know, one of the best presents, Christmas presents that a kid could get is to have their mom come back,
Right.
have their dad come back, and that's, you know, that's life changing. And so
And just not come back in its physical self.
That's right.
But in their whole self. I just gave a talk at Food for Thought last month about how what it looks like to show up as a whole person. And as you know, well, as most of you know, I experienced homelessness as a youth. And it's a journey. I'm just turned 45 a couple weeks ago. And I think just last year, I became like a real whole person. You know, I've been on this journey of recovery from
for a while.
childhood trauma, from the result of my mother's passing because of the challenges that she faced. And I'm not an addict. I don't have it. Maybe my addiction is people. I'm addicted to helping people. Let's if I'm owning it, being
addiction
totally
to
honest. But I what I see in what you're describing, and I see this with the graduates of Her Place, and soon
Yeah.
some of the graduates of His Place,
Right.
or the SOAR program. When they come in to the system, they are not whole. They're empty. They're empty and hollow and lost. And I know what you guys do returns them to being whole. So that way when they come home at Christmas for their children, they are
Yeah.
fully present and fully embracing them. And a child can feel that.
Yep.
They know when mom or dad is not present and distracted or lost because you can see it in their eyes. And there's no greater gift that I've ever experienced in my life than watching a reunification of a parent and a child in a whole fashion and breaking that cycle of addiction and trauma and all the things that come with it for those kiddos. Because while they'll never forget it, they heal so quickly when their parents are whole.
Our whole,
They don't repeat that cycle.
Right.
And we're making
We're breaking
profound
that
impacts.
yeah. we're
And it's like, you know, people are like, well, it's just a few people. Yeah, well, think about the broader space. Like, Her Place has graduated 100 women in the last few, couple of decades.
Wow.
That 100 women grows to be thousands of people
Right.
because of their family and their children and et cetera. That's a big deal.
When we see people, as Julie, as you talked about family, when we see people out and about who are in need of help, that's not one person. That can be, there's 5 others or 2 others that are suffering because that one person
Yeah.
has just fell into addiction or has just found, I get the question sometimes, well, how many people just want help? How many people don't? There's a friend of mine that asked me that. And I said, well, all I know is the guy that I talked to this morning would like to live a life like you live.
Yeah.
That's all I know. That's it. And so there's more people than the one that you see.
Right.
And whether they made bad decisions or not, God didn't tell us to separate them out. He'll do that later. Bottom line is, He asked us to care. Come unto me, all who are heavy laden and burdened, and I will give you rest. And that's what drives us in terms of wanting to see people whole, spiritually, physically, relationally.
Yeah.
That's that whole person. So if we just throw housing out there, is that the answer?
No.
Alone.
No.
Nope.
If we just throw counseling out there, is that the answer?
No.
And so when we think about holistic 360-degree love for that person,
Yeah.
it takes everything. And if it's separate agencies or it's separate communities or neighborhoods, hey, this is a place to start talking about all of us being mobilized to care for one another.
Julie has a story from last night. We were talking on the phone,
We were.
and in the discussion, I would say some awareness came about from what I heard her say. Do you want to share your story?
Well, I live in Northeast Salem. My business is on Lancaster. That's my ward area out
Yeah.
there. So I live and work where there's a lot of activity, the kinds of things that we're talking about here. And I have, several times yesterday, I'm not sure what happened, if a strong batch of something hit the streets, than the last few days or what, but there have been so many more people in crisis, obviously higher than you care to see. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of that. But this one woman was passed out on the sidewalk there by where the Salvation Army used to be, and she didn't look the part. You know, I thought that doesn't look right. She's pretty well dressed, and she's got a purse, and I was like this, and I saw people kind of scoping her out, and I thought I think I better
Stop.
go to her, you know. So I called non-emergency. There's a lady on the sidewalk. Blah, blah, blah. And I finally got out, and I get a little closer, and I can see that there's an empty bottle of alcohol next to her, and I'm like, well, this isn't good. So non-emergency, this woman's here. I think you better come. And I tried to go about my business, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. So I went and I just stood with her. I thought, I'm just going to stand here until somebody shows up,
Yeah.
because I can't leave her alone, and
Wow.
I can't pick her up, right?
Compassion.
And I didn't want to aggravate her and have a problem.
Sure.
Meanwhile, I'm watching other folks in crisis having their issue in the alley and their whatever, and I'm like, this is just a bit much. Anyhow, she wasn't doing well, and eventually I did call 911 because she seemed to get worse
Worse.
physically, and I don't know, that's my story.
Okay, what about the lady walking by? So the piece of the story that
okay.
that is so important here is
Yeah.
about the being seen part.
Yeah, so go ahead.
So she's telling me this story, and there's obviously more to it that we'll keep to ourselves. But at one point, a woman who fits the part walks by, looks the part, walks by, and I don't recall what she said exactly.
She stopped. She was going to get next to the woman, and I just kind of said, "Up, she's just having a bad day," you know. And the lady looked at me and she goes, "You're a nice person." And I said, "I am?" She goes, "Yeah, you don't see a lot of nice people." And she walked away, and she turned around and she said, "You know, you think that there isn't a lot of good people in the world.
Yeah.
You're a good person to stand with her." And then she just left.
So for Julie, in this story, is she's just in this space being helpful and compassionate and trying to protect. What I heard happen is that woman who looks the part, who stopped for a minute and observed that there are people who see us. You know, the Stop for the One movement,
Yeah.
which, I mean, come on. If that doesn't become an international freaking brand, I'm going to be so mad because I talk about it all the time. Here's Julie stopping for the one.
Yeah.
And
Let's hear her.
another one who is lost
Is found.
has been found.
We
And
see
while
it.
Julie didn't need to even do anything for that other woman, what I believe happened is that her heart warmed for just a minute. And anytime somebody's heart can just be a little extra warm, that means that they're that much closer to being saved
Yeah.
and to being held and to being stabilized.
Amen.
Amen.
And so while Julie was, and I'm just going to say, this was a hard day for her. It's a hard day for anybody that does this work. It's hard to be in our jobs and to fight for the masses and to be frustrated by people who don't really want to see change because of their politics.
Right.
But I heard what she said, and I know what that woman felt. And I'm so grateful that you stopped for that one woman and impacted two.
That is good.
That's the story of Jesus Christ.
That's exactly
Right.
the story
Is
of Christ.
over and over and over while he was in ministry, he stopped for the one, and stopped and ministered to that one person
Right.
outside of a crowd or a group or whatever. And so I'm glad to hear you say that. Stop for the one.
For
It's,
And
we
the Good
love
Samaritan
saying that. Yeah.
stopped for one.
Yeah.
Jesus did it hundreds of times that we know of, but in fact, that doesn't mean we can't do the same. And that's
Right.
what you did, Jim, and that's what we try to do.
People are afraid, Dan. You know this.
Yeah.
This average citizen. So as Julie is standing there yesterday with this one woman, people roll down the window as they're driving down Center Street.
Yeah.
Did she fall? Do you need help?
Yeah.
People don't know how to inherently be a leader and to show up because it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean,
Scary. Yeah.
you know, I'm not scared of anything now because I feel like I've done most of the scary things. So I just show up, and so does Julie. But through influence, and presence, maybe we can teach other people to just be brave enough to stop for the one. And that's what it is. It's, you have to be brave. It's terrifying to think that maybe this one woman is going to attach herself to me, and then it becomes a significant burden for me. And I have all my own things that I have to do with my own life and my own family and all this selfish right that comes with our individuality.
Right.
But through training and awareness, you can help this one person. To Dan, who has an entire facility that wants
Come
to pick
on
them
down.
up.
I got a bed and a meal and a lot of friendship waiting your way.
Yeah.
One of the most effective things that I've seen people do, both in the shelter and out, because we have an outreach, search, and rescue program in the camps. Hi, my name's Dan. What's yours?
Danielle.
Just come on,
Right.
let's treat each other like we're valued, like we're fellow human beings or children of God. Take your pick. But I think the whole idea is it doesn't take much, and the fear goes away. So many of our volunteers come down to the mission, to Samanka Place for the ladies and kids, and down to the men's mission, and they just serve food. And after a couple of times of doing that, they get to know the guys by name,
Yeah.
and then the guys get to know them.
Yeah.
And that's that start of dignity and respect, because it isn't out on the street, and it needs to be. So we can all play a role, even if we feel helpless. But Mark, any thoughts about community involvement and all the stuff we've talked about?
Lots of thoughts, obviously. I think that's the whole idea behind being here today, is to learn to, we're seeing what the issue is. It's a hard issue. It's an ugly issue. And it takes a lot of people with desire and perseverance to address these issues. And that's what this is all about right here, is bringing our community together to hear that community conversation, ask the hard questions so that we can provide answers and or find answers to those questions. But I really believe that bringing us all together, faith community, as Sam Skillern says, faith community, community of goodwill, whatever the part of our community is, we have to do this together.
Right.
We have to do this together.
I was on Fox News yesterday talking about the crisis here in Oregon, but specifically here in Marion County. And she asked me what I thought the biggest change has been since I've been in public service. I've been in public service for 25 years now. And I can confidently say it has been the breakdown between government and community programs. There has become a movement in my adult life where the government, members of the government rather, certain ones, have said that if you go to that church, they're going to judge you.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, I was supported specifically by a program called The Rec, which was through a church in East Salem.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for that church program, I would have been sleeping on the streets at 15.
Wow.
And I never felt like that I had to be churchy or that I had to talk about God or that I had to do any of it.
Right.
I just went to the church, to the gymnasium, and did the things that teenagers do.
Teenagers do.
None of my peers knew that I was homeless. None of them.
Wow.
Because I was so supported by my community. I had teachers, and I had an employer at one point that was really invested in me, a softball coach, and these programs. But now we see these programs struggling to survive because there's this whole narrative that there has to be a barrier between church and state. And for me, I mean, I'm not going to go fund like Sunday service as a government official, but if a church can show up, and we did this, we've funded different programs that are faith-based because they're the ones that last, because the community supports them first and foremost through their own donation and time, and then taxes come last to kind of fill the gap. That has to become more robust. It has to become another part of our lifestyle again.
That's right.
Where this isn't a government problem to solve. This is a community problem to solve.
Yes.
And it is different in every community. If you go from Marion County to Grant County, the issue, and if you don't know where Grant County is, look it up on the Oregon map.
Yeah.
It's a very different situation, and the services are different. The community, the culture are very different. The state can't just like policy make its way out of a
Right.
human situation.
Right.
It just can't. And that interview is going to air nationally, and I think it's the case for every state in the country
Sure.
that we have to return the ownership and the onus back into the communities, and it be a grassroots movement, community expectations, and we love our neighbors, and we should probably start fostering the idea that family is good,
Yeah.
and that we embrace the broken inside families,
Right.
and it's okay to not be perfect. I don't necessarily like all the members of my family all the time, but I love them and I'm
You guys
there for
heard
them.
that,
I have 3 teenagers. They have all heard this. I don't really like you right now. I will always love you, but you should find time to go over there.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? That's normal.
That's what it is.
That's
It's
love.
normal.
That's
I had
family
great
love.
kids.
That's what it looks like. We had 5 kids and then a couple more, but just that family structure, we feel that when folks come through and get the help that they need, they find faith in God and in Jesus, then the family does come back together.
Yep.
Because the heart is whole, and then the person becomes whole, and then the family becomes one again. And so one of the folks that graduated in our program a couple of years ago said, I'm just joyous over just being renewed, but it's really cool when I talk to my kids now, they actually believe me.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going, okay, there's,
But do you know what happened in that situation? They both had to heal.
yep,
Someday I'm going to write a book. I feel like I need to just write the book and talk about it because.
we'll just talk about it and have somebody else type it out.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's probably clips for the last 4 years you could just put together.
Yeah.
But I had to take a break from my mom at one point.
Yeah, right.
My mom had a really big disability, and she was really hard to be a daughter of. She made it difficult to be her daughter, and her family abandoned her, which is why we became abandoned as a unit.
It just goes on.
Because
and
she
on.
was difficult and they didn't understand, and also the government failed that system of family, because when they did reach in to say, hey, we need help, that help wasn't available for them, and that it's got harder and harder and harder.
Sure.
And then the shame becomes heavier and heavier and heavier, probably for her family and then for her. I hear people all the time say, how come they can't just get it together?
Yeah.
Or I got a call from a business owner in Kaiser. He has a man living on his back porch of his business. He doesn't want him living there.
Right.
I provided a resource to go over to talk to this man. The stories go like, the resource provider says, do you have family? Where can we take you? And this man said, I have a mom. She lives in South Salem, but I can't live with her. She doesn't want me there. The business owner is like, what's wrong with that mom?
Yeah.
And I said, are you
There's
kidding
two
me?
people. There's
Look at
two
how
people.
difficult the
Yeah.
situation is. She needs help. Let's not shame her for being lost in this. She didn't want her son to turn out the way he is.
Sure.
She didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a burden for that business
For
owner, and we'll rectify that. But people need to just take a minute and realize that there are multiple players in whatever this person in trauma is experiencing, and they have their own trauma too.
And multiple reasons for that trauma.
Right.
And when you hear those stories, is it their fault, or did they make bad choices, or did it happen to them out of
Right.
their control? And we say, we don't care. You're in trauma.
Right. Yeah.
Until there's dignity and respect, friendship, and the beginning start of retrusting
Yeah.
people again, or even a counselor or someone who wants to stop and help. You're building that retrust, and this is a runaway train, homelessness, and we're going to put the brakes on, and we're going to do it as a community.
There's some saying going around the internet that I saw on an Instagram post a couple weeks ago that said, it was a mother talking to her teenage child in apology. I'm sorry, I'm living for the first time too.
Yeah.
How impactful is that
Yeah,
to
didn't
think
get
about? I'm just doing this for the first time too.
Wow.
I don't know anything until I've experienced it. And it made me pause because
Yeah.
I reflect back on the life with my mom and how I was really hard on her. And I was angry with her. And I felt all the emotions for a long, long time. And I'm so grateful that God gave me the opportunity just a year before she died to reconnect.
To reconnect.
To be able to find forgiveness and to talk and to hear her and she hear me and us spend that year of just living. In reflection, she was just living for the first time too.
Yeah.
While her life was a little different and a little more complicated than mine.
Love that.
She didn't know anything else.
Isn't it amazing how patient God is with us? He allows us to go through all this
Yes.
stuff, and then all of us, but when you're told you're loved, then that starts to change it. When you're shown dignity and respect, you could break that cycle
right.
that you're talking about, and that's what we're all about through the transforming grace of Jesus Christ at UGM. You don't have to go to chapel to get a meal.
Right.
You don't have to profess anything. Those doors are open for everybody that needs to come in.
I
men
go to
and
lunch
women.
at the UGM.
Yeah.
I've
Right
had
on.
lunch there a few times with Dan in the room with all the men, and they're always probably wondering who I am and why am I there. But they're friendly. They're very friendly.
Hey,
And the food's good.
Dan, could you speak to that, what do you call it, hospitality? Because you're aware, I have a family member who struggles. And one of the reasons that family member gives for not going to the Union Gospel Mission is that he will be judged and Jesus will be shoved down his throat. Can you speak to that? Like why?
Let me start with the second point first.
Thank you.
There's no requirement to attend chapel or go to any Sunday school classes. It's amazing how when guys aren't forced to go, they go.
Right.
I mean, I'm going, okay, Lord, this is a cruel joke you're playing on us here, but the reality is we don't shove anything. The welcome desk has got smiles and handshakes and what do you need, how can we help? I test it every now and then because that's the point of the Spirit in terms of people, the good Spirit of people coming in. But we don't shove Jesus, we show our calling is to show Jesus, is to show compassion. The readiness to accept everybody as a child of God, faults and all, because we got them too. And many of the folks that volunteers and staff at UGM have been through this same trauma. I haven't. I've had other issues, but I haven't. But most of the folks that work with directly at the front door have been through these traumas and have become overcomers. And so you want an overcomer there. Your second point was that first point.
First point was they'll judge me.
Yeah.
Meaning the people in the center
Yeah.
or the staff?
Yeah. The person said, I'm not going to go there. They'll just judge me.
Well, one of the first hurdles that we overcome and talk about in the New Life Fellowship program is the 6-week class on shame. We work through that cohort of men and that Samantha place. They work through telling their stories, and they've got guys and gals next to them that are sharing their stories. And guess what happens? That shame gets released.
Right.
It gets released. So the judgment is not, it may be felt as an emotion by anybody.
I think it's fear though.
It's fear.
Yeah, what
And
I hear
so-
him saying is I'm afraid to be vulnerable. Yeah,
That's right.
The first time I told my story, it ended up on the front page of the newspaper. I mean, I knew the newspaper
Really?
was there. Yeah, I knew the newspaper was in the room. It didn't occur to me because I was in a very impassioned space at that time because I was being accused of some stuff politically, and I just kind of launched out at the response.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the most healing thing that's ever happened because I had to own it. It was in my face. And if people saw me differently, I wouldn't say that it was a negative scene, but it's scary to be vulnerable and to show up into an environment of people. It's like, I mean, we all went to high school.
Yeah.
It was hard to join a club.
First day of school.
Right?
You don't,
I mean, I tried out for basketball.
you wonder what everybody thinks of you.
Yeah, and I
Same
sucked
thing.
at basketball.
I mean, really.
It's fear, and you have to. I think that the person wants to be able to be different, but they need to be encouraged to be courageous, and to find that little bit of bravery.
Well, you're full of fear when you don't think you can trust the people around you.
Yep.
And you got to start somewhere, because a smile, a handshake, and come on this way. What do you need?
Right.
What do you want? What do you need? And that's the best we can do. But I will tell you that most of the guys and the folks in our shelters, I don't think they're in the judgment
Business.
role. And we pray and work with staff to make sure that we aren't in judgment.
Sure.
When we built the new men's mission, and we'll do some projects at Samak in the future.
I can't wait.
Yeah, me either. We tried to build and design it for dignity and respect. So I've got a police department 5 stories high right next door. Well, we deliberately designed the entrance so that they wouldn't be in view of the public or the police.
Right.
And we put windows all along that side of the building so the morning sunlight. So a big open space where there's comfortable chairs and counselors right there at the front door, medical clinic right there. I mean, we're doing everything we can to show that we love them and dignity and respect. So yes, there are fears when you've lived outside and your relationship are all broken.
Yep.
All broken. The only people you can trust are the people in your camp or the people that you live with, and that's not a life, that's a survival. And we just beg and pray for folks to come in, and that we are trusting and non-judgmental. But it's hard to overcome.
Yeah, breaking down those barriers. I mean, there's nothing better than grace and forgiveness
Yeah.
to break that barrier down. And I think that that's something, like Dan says, that all of our staff work hard on realizing. We're also human too, so we make mistakes, but grace and forgiveness is just kind of a mantra for us.
So one of the other things that comes up, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but you guys got too many rules down there.
Oh yeah.
We got too many rules.
Right.
Okay.
My kids told me that too when they were growing up.
Yeah. I have 2 rules. You gotta sleep at night, live during the day. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's opposite of what they've been experiencing. So that's hard to make that
Yeah,
transition. Maybe.
right.
But the other rule is you can't be a harm to yourself or others.
Right.
Come on. Same thing we learned in kindergarten. So,
Right.
other than that, we can't wait for you to come in. In fact, we had over 200 men lined up this morning for breakfast.
Wow.
So we're feeding with
Record numbers.
record numbers last month. and this
14,000 in December.
14,000.
14,000
Wow.
meals. Meals, yeah.
You know, sometimes
So-
it just starts when you're hungry and you want a meal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We're
also, I
there
just
for
think there's I do feel like there's more effort. I mean, I see Be Bold Street Ministries, the Hope Dealers out every day. I follow their page and I see them I know when they're going, I know where they are. Your outreach team, the City of Salem outreach team, the Marion County outreach team, the law enforcement teams. In fact, I mean, Salem PD has 2 outreach officers then they've got the bicycle officers. Our team, Marion County, has those teams. I don't know if it's just a larger mass of outreach people kind of coalescing in the same space and starting to really show unity in bringing them in. Let's bring you in. We don't want you to be out. We want you to be in. I don't want you to be in on the sidewalk. I want you to be in the UGM. So, but I still see more and more people. The teams are growing.
One of the myths we want to dispel a little bit later today with some of our guests is, why does it feel, why does it feel more safe or more comfortable outside than inside? So stay tuned. We'll be talking about that, because that is something that the folks who are out deal with.
Yeah.
And how do you get past
I know the answer
that?
to this. I can't wait to hear what you. I'm not gonna let it out.
Well,
fast, but I know the answer.
We're gonna
to
have
this.
folks who've lived that to be able to
Good.
share that. So stay tuned.
Before we get you out of here, I just wanted to interrupt the proceedings here. Part of this is if your heart is stirred to give and to support Union Gospel Mission, that's part of this 50 hours. Everything we raise will go towards meals and beds. Basic human needs is what we're looking to help support. And I just want to say that as of right now, in the first 45 minutes, we've raised $1,672.
Oh, nice.
And
Thank you.
every one of those dollars is being matched by Ace Hardware. So up to $2,500. So
I was already going shopping in there. But now I for sure am going to go shopping in there. I need some potting soil.
Ace Hardware, Madrona South.
Nope.
but we want to encourage folks to stop by, ask questions, be part of the conversation.
Where is this place? Because I'll tell you what, I took the longest way possible to get here. It's
706 Madrona.
right up the hill from
Commercial.
South Salem, Fred Meyer. It's
Right.
right across the street, but up the hill.
Look above the Burger King.
I almost
You'll
flew
see
right
it.
by.
Above the Burger King.
Look high.
Yeah.
'Cause that's where we are. We're on top of the hill.
You can get a workout in. I think.
Yeah.
Isn't there a gym next door or something?
Oh, there was.
No,
There's
not anymore.
A Dollar Tree now. So
More
shop
shopping.
Ace.
Oh, there's a saw shop. Oh, my husband's gonna be like, get out of here.
So speaking of outreach, here in just a little bit, Matt Massera is going to be here.
good.
Bruce Donahue, our outreach person, is going to be here at the same time.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about outreach and life in the camps during that time in about an hour from now. So join us. And you're welcome to stay. I know you guys are busy, or you can go shopping.
Quick prayer.
Oh, yeah.
Do it.
Our Father in heaven, Lord, thank you for these souls that care about other souls. Lord, lives are being changed, and their good efforts, their prayers, their actions that they're taking, and their support for those fighting the battle of homelessness. Lord, we know this can be beat. With your help and with this community coming together, there is great hope for many people coming back to the communities, families restored, and health and prosperity for all. And Lord, we just thank you for your grace and forgiveness. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Nice.
Right on.